Hey, what's going on, guys? This is a multi-video response. Consider this a mega response to the tag team POV between Phil and Ed, um, Grand Theft Analysis slash Zips Dill on overzealous fans, and Jman and Zips Dills about problems with comic books and manga and whatnot. Now, this is going to be more on the comic book side, but still, I'm going to talk about all this stuff. But first, I'm going to talk about commerce and comics and marketing. Because I found this to be a very intriguing video that both Ed and Phil themselves put together. Now, here's my spiel about comics. Now, to me, comic books, when you're marketing them, they're very marketable for not only young adults, but young children as well. And there are a lot of adults, like myself, or Ed, or Phil, or Zip, or like Deadpoolzilla, or Mount Vernon Kid, etc., who are collectors. We collect these comics, we enjoy these comics, we enjoy the characters that we all grew up reading. However, lately, comic books in the modern era have kind of started to diminish. And there's a lot of people that want to get into comics. And the hard part about selling comics, as a business, is that you gotta try to make up stories. You gotta try to make good, influential stories for people to read. Well, the problem with this is, at least in my opinion, is that on one hand, I realize that Marvel and DC are businesses, but on the other hand, if you're going to be making movies, and you're going to be making, cartoons and animated movies and whatnot and what have you, you kind of have to make stuff that sticks. A lot of people have a problem with Iron Man Armored Adventures. I don't really find that to be much of a problem because I find Armored Adventures to be a very unique take on Iron Man. It's not the best take, but it's an interesting take that I myself and F.W. Waller enjoy. We both actually like this series, and we find it to be a very unique perspective on Tony Stark, considering that he's a teenager. Batman Brave and the Bold, I think, is one of the many great examples of good marketing for a comic book character because, and I'll tell you why, and this is a multi-leveled reason. Number one, it's Batman, who is DC's highest selling character. Number two, it's kid-friendly, so kids can watch it as well as young adults. Number three, they introduce a lot of obscure characters or lesser known characters in the DC universe that nobody really talks about, or characters that don't really sell very well because they're not exposed. And this becomes a problem. And this is why, and also I think the biggest problem with comic books as well, and even with some animes and mangas as well, dare I say it, is that you try to switch up writers, and you try to switch up storytellers as well. Writers, storytellers, artists. There are some that mesh well and some that don't. People like Jeff Johns, for example. Jeff Johns, I think, is a really good writer. The only problem with him is that he tries to put in too much of a badass factor on characters. And it tends to get a little bland and overplayed. Also, the man seems to include a lot of dark overtones and violence. Now, I'm not saying that violence in comic books is a bad thing, but I think a great example is Brian Michael Bendis having the Sentry rip Ares in half, which is in a modern continuity. That's something that you would more or less see in a Max comic. And so here's basically my commerce idea. Here's my idea pretty much. You should have 3 lines of books. You should have your Marvel DC adventures, or like general audience stuff for like kids and people that want lighthearted campy stories. You got the current continuity, which is like a nice blend of like the Bronze Age. It's got the campiness of the Silver Age, but yet it's got dark contemporary modern themes. Batman the Animated Series is an example that we always go back to in the YouTube comic book community. And then you got your Vertigo Max comics for like the much more mature readers, the people that, don't mind sex, nudity, violence, and all that stuff. Now the problem with this is that with a lot of the movies coming out, I applaud a lot of Marvel's movies. And I wish that Warner Brothers would do the same with DC and let them have free reign. But the problem with this is that the movies are a lot better than the comics, and that bothers me as someone who grew up reading comics, because the comic books should inspire good movies as the movies should inspire good sales in comics. They should be a nice blend. They should complement each other. And unfortunately with Marvel and DC we don't see this. And it's very sad. And what's also sad is that there's a lot of new readers that are coming in and saying, well, what should we read? Should we do this? Should we do that? Here's what I think. I think the New 52, what that should have been for DC, was in a way a reboot that went back to the Bronze Age, where it was like dark contemporary themes, but it had campy lightheartedness of the Silver Age. Pretty much like, teaching kids not to do drugs, but yet having, like adult-oriented like subplots within the comics. And I think once you find that nice blend, I think that you start to come up with something that is really, really good. But I could ramble on about this all day, but I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Because I think I've said just about as much as I can really say and hit all the main points on that. So let me move on. Let me talk real briefly about overzealousness in comics. Now, actually, you know what? I'll save the overzealousness, actually, guys. Sorry, scratch that. Let me actually talk about why superheroes are prevalent in pop culture. Think of this, as you will, as a brief spiritual sequel to my Autonomy of the Superhero video and Morals in Comics. As I'm saying here is that, the general public, as well as those of us in the YouTube comic book community and like manga and anime communities, we love heroes and we love heroic characters. We love characters that we can pretty much relate to. Characters that we are awe-inspired by. That is the purpose of superheroes. They are meant to spark our imagination, to, as Zip lovingly put it, to raise us a lot better half of the time than our own parents. Because let's face it, we all rebel against our parents. We all think that our parents at times are stupid. However, if we're reading a comic book, we don't think about that same thing because, that's somebody that is not our parent. That's a part of our rebellious subconscious in our teens. And there are many characters that I grew up with that I love and enjoy, and still to this day, I feel a connection with. Characters like Superman, Green Lantern, Captain America, and, even, the very first comic book characters I read, the X-Men. And the problem with this is that, as I've said, not only with commerce, but here's the bad part about comic books is that, with Batman being the so-called only character that everyone loves, it's kind of become a problem, become a bit of a problem. Oh wait, sorry, guys. Well, actually, you know what? I'll combine this overzealousness with what I'm saying here. Basically, overzealous fans, they ruin that because Batman is not the only character. Spider-Man is not the only character. The X-Men are not the only characters. Superman's even becoming obscure, but he's not the only character. And I think shows like Brave and the Bold were really great in the fact that they introduced us to different characters. Characters that we could actually relate to. Characters that we find are cool. That's why I think, these superhero films are doing really well. Is the fact that, people love superheroes. They love characters that inspire hope. Characters that make us, feel good. Make us feel that we should go out and do something positive. That's why the majority of the superheroes that are having movies or in comic books have lasted as long as they have. Is because there's this great appeal of seeing a character that we love on the big screen, seeing a character that we never thought would get their own movie. Like, I'll admit, as much of a quote-unquote failure as the Green Lantern film is, it's still kind of nice in some semblance of a way that GL gets his own live-action movie. That's like something that you would never ever see. And with the upcoming Avengers film, this is every nerd's, like fantasy come to life. Because who'd ever think that in this lifetime, our lifetime even, mine, Mount Vernon kids, F.W. Waller, etc., that we would see an Avengers film. See all these heroes that we read in comics growing up, characters that have just now gotten their own solo films, all assemble as a team. Now, for those of you that are very new to the superhero genre, I can understand how that may possibly not be a big deal, but to those who are comic book lovers, it's a magical thing to see characters that you grew up with, characters that you always wanted to see team up. And I think also one great marketing ploy that Marvel and DC need to get back to, but sadly it'll probably never come around to, because Marvel and DC apparently have their heads crammed up where the sun don't shine, is the Amalgam universe. Because in the Amalgam universe we had characters like Super Soldier, Spider-Boy, Professor Fate, what was it, like Death Devil, and what was it, like Speed Demon, and even Darkclaw, and Bruce Wayne, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., fighting Lex Luthor, the Green Skull. Now, as silly and over the top as all these ideas are, that was a great thing to see in the 90s, because it was something new, it was something different. And I think that's where the overzealousness of a lot of fanboys and fangirls comes from, is that people are so concerned about Batman. It's got to be Batman. It's got to be dark like the Nolan movies. And, people, especially people that are just now getting into comic books, they're missing that. They're missing the point of why superheroes exist. Superheroes don't exist so that they have to be real or grounded or severely flawed. No. If you look at a lot of the villains that Batman faces, they are not realistic. Characters like Clayface, he interacts with characters like Swamp Thing, he interacts with Superman, he's fought against Darkseid, he's fought against he's even fought against Doomsday, or helped fight against Doomsday, he's helped fight against Imperiex. No normal human being would be able to go toe-to-toe or even remotely stand a chance against these guys. But Batman, Batman fights these characters, but I think that's the bad part about comic books in general, or especially overzealous fans. And the same can be said for anime. It's like, One Piece and Naruto are not the only animes out there. Neither is Dragon Ball. And I think that's the problem just in general with a lot of fans of manga, anime, comic books, etc. is that these people are making the rest of us who are open-minded, who know other characters beyond Batman and Superman and Luffy and Naruto and Sasuke and whoa, almost cursed. I almost cursed right there. Knowing Sasuke and all that junk. It's like, look guys, there are more than just these characters. And in general, the superhero genre is meant to inspire us from a young age. They're not meant to be dark, they're not meant to be realistic. They're meant to be fun and inspiring. And I think a lot of people miss that point. And I really hope one day that that point comes back across, and I really hope that Marvel and DC kind of go back to that way of marketing, if you will. But that's just my 2 cents, guys. Take it for what you will.